Teachers of Reddit, what is something a student of yours has said that made you think, wow, there is no hope left for you? University professor here. A student last term never purchased the textbook, and thus never did his homework, sat in the back and spaced out all class, failed one exam, and barely passed the other. He came to me during the final week of class to ask me if he could do all of his missed assignments and then asked why I didn't remind him to do them. Bro, this is university. I'm not chasing after you. I had one who stopped coming to class for the last 6 weeks of semester, and instead of writing the essay on the exam, wrote a 2-page rant about how unfair it was of me to base the exam on stuff that happened in class. Also in the rant, complaints about how I had not called her to remind her to do assignments, come to class and find out what was on the exam. I work at an alternative school for kids kicked out of public school for severe emotional and behavioral issues. A lot of them are going to require government services for the rest of their lives. There's usually not just one thing they say, but we know that they will never have normal lives. It's a little disheartening to hear a 6-year-old scream that he's going to freaking kill you, especially when you were playing tag not 5 minutes before. There's a young boy who can be very sweet and is an adorable blonde butterball. However, he has pretty severe behaviors and gets restrained at some point on a daily basis. I saw his parents one day because they live in government subsidized housing close by and walk him to school. It was 50 degrees out and the little boy was in a basketball jersey and shorts. His parents looked exactly how I expected them to look and were rude to all the staff they interacted with. It just showed me that no matter how much we do, he spends most of his life with his crappy parents. Having a child with behaviors doesn't inherently make someone a bad parent, but in our program specifically, most of the students come from harsh backgrounds which either causes or exacerbates their behavior. I had one student at a bilingual school in Mexico, who after being at this school and supposedly learning English for 5+ years, still couldn't speak it and barely tried to make any effort to learn anything. Didn't do assignments and failed almost every test. When we mentioned it to her parents, their attitude was that she doesn't really need it because she will just marry someone who will take care of everything for her. My thought was, who would want to marry someone who doesn't know anything and makes no effort? I knew a girl like this, outright refused to work or even do any chores for her family because she'll just marry a rich man that'll do everything for me. I remember hearing about how she'd lose her crap if someone so much as asked her to rewind the VCR. I didn't teach, but I mentored for a few years. Heard one student say she didn't care about school, didn't want to go to college because she will just go on welfare. One 6th grader was expelled for behavior, constantly was kicked out of class, fought dress code violations, including wearing gang colors, expelled at 13, couldn't multiply, could barely read, can't remember one specific thing he said to make me think he had no hope, but it was pretty depressing. Man, I tutored in an elementary school and had students like this as well. It really made me depressed and feel hopeless. I learned that no matter how much of a positive influence I could have on a child, their home life and time spent out of school was this biggest influence on who they would ultimately be. Just this week, I have a student in grade 5 that is pretty oppositional, has a tough home life, etc. He doesn't always try very hard, but sometimes I can see he's trying to put in some effort. We were talking about how I grade them, and he interrupts the conversation with, "I don't care at all about my grades." And I thought, here we go, another rant about how unfair school is. I just want to know that I keep getting better. Perfect. I got chills. This is nice to hear, buried in all the depressing stories about fricked up kids. I had a student who was a hoarder. He was one of those kids that we all remember who had the backpack that was filled with everything for every class. It looked like this kid carried around a small grocery cart on his back. One day, I'm walking him to his locker to look for an assignment that I knew that I had given him before and I smell this nasty smell. Big surprise, it's his locker. Open it to find 89 cartons of chocolate milk stacked inside. That's not all on the floor, he had a pretty large mason jar filled with what looked like dead bugs. I asked him why he had so much milk in his locker and he said stone-faced to dip the bugs in. Never sure what happened to this kid when he left, but that was the most disturbing for me. What the actual frick? I'm a 2nd grade teacher. I have a boy who lies constantly, about anything. He was on camera, watching the footage of himself punching a student in the face, and he crossed his arms and said, "If I didn't do it, then I didn't do it." The worst part is mom believes every word he says and attacks the school for making him accountable for his actions. He's going to do something as an adult and go to jail. When they pull him away, I know he's going to be yelling, "If I didn't do it, I didn't do it." He'll be like that guy on Role Models who is talking to his lawyer while reviewing the security cam footage of him stealing TVs. "That's not me. Him on tape. I can't believe I, George Smith, am stealing TVs again. That's not me." 7th grade, in the US. On the first day of class, the students each said what they did over summer. One kid said he went to Germany. The kid sitting next to him audibly asked where that was, and if it was further away than Chicago. I thought he must have misunderstood what the first guy said, so I intervened. Chicago is about 100 miles away. Germany is in Europe. That's another continent entirely. The kid looked blankly at me and asked what that was. The word continent. I was dumbfounded. I gestured at the map of the world on the wall and pointed at the continents, thinking he must have learned them pronounced differently or something. But nope. He literally didn't know what they were, and never realized that the picture on the wall of the geography room was actually a map of the world. He was in 7th grade, and he didn't know what a continent was, or have even a toddler's level of understanding of what a map was. My brother teaches junior high in a very small, rural, low-income community. As a new teacher, he basically got the special math classes the other teachers wouldn't take. My favorite story. Apparently it was a very naive move on his part to let them choose their own seats at the beginning. After the second week, he made a seating chart. It didn't go over well, and he told his students if they didn't like it to write him a note with where they'd like to sit, fold it up, and put it in the trash can. By the end of the day, apparently there were 10 or so neatly folded suggestions in his trash can. That's actually pretty funny, but I probably would have done the same at their age. I teach lots of 7-9-year-olds and quite often ask them to spell their names for me just so I get it correct for them, Rachel or Rachel, etc. But you wouldn't believe just how many of these children don't have a clue. I appreciate some may be dyslexic and that, so I don't expect all of them to know, but just more surprised at such a high percentage. I'm only talking about their first names, and the ones that have trouble tend to have simpler names. I have a very short first name, 3 letters, and an almost comically complicated last name, at least to a 5-year-old, and anyone not of my background, and there weren't any in my class at that age. I absolutely refuse to believe I had to learn how to spell my last name until 2nd grade. I student teach for college, and I've seen it all. The kids don't just act better, try harder just because there's a student teacher in the room. One kid in a tutoring program had great math skills. I think his name was Caden. 3rd grader doing long division easily. From what I've seen in local schools, long division isn't until 4th grade. He was teaching himself fractions and they were all correct. I'd never seen that, even in gifted classes. The tutoring program was for at-risk kids, most of which didn't have parents at home 90% of the time, so they usually didn't get breakfast or dinner at home or any kind of praise or study time. Most of them were below the poverty line or being raised by a barely older sibling. This kid was the only one that tried and didn't come for the after-school sandwiches. For the first month or two, he was excited and eager and was glad that I was helping him and being proud. I was freaking impressed. He was being made fun of by the other kids for trying so hard and basically being smart. Over the next 2 months, he started doing less self-teaching and stopped turning in his homework. It was all done and correct, but he'd just stick it in his bag and not turn it in. His grades started dropping and they made fun of him for that. After that, he'd come to tutoring and just put his head down on the desk, eat the sandwich, do a few questions and leave. He eventually stopped coming, and by the next semester I heard that he had started breaking rules and getting in trouble. This poor kid was doing so well, excelling even, and his fear of sticking out turned him into a completely different kid. I don't know what happened to him since I moved to another school. This was 3 years ago, so I can only hope something changed or he got help and he went back to normal. Poor Caden. During lunch duty at a high school, had to ask a kid who had a bad rep to move. He pulled over an extra chair to a table, making it so you could not easily get around that area, which was a very clear rule in the school for fire safety reasons. He does but moves back. I gently remind him again and say if I see it again I'd have to write him up. He moves back for about 5 minutes. Then, frustrated he can't hear his friends, looks at me, pulls his chair back to the table, hands me his ID and says, "I'm going to jail anyways." He took his ID to get his name, which I already knew, said thanks for cooperating, and then left him the frick alone. He was in a fight a month later, had to be taken down by 3 school cops, and taken out of school in cuffs. All students had the option to go outside as well for lunch to be able to sit and talk in larger groups. He was offered that option by both his friends and me, and the weather was nice. The rule seemed stupid until, when I was a student there, and saw a kid have an allergic reaction, and struggle to see adults and nurses get to the kid with 300 students, chairs, and tables in the way. A promising future as a psychic, or Sith Lord. High school teacher here. Recently had something valuable stolen from my classroom. Student who stole it did it after school hour and was caught on video clearly walking into my room then leaving with not long after. Myself and my principal pulled her aside, asked if she stole it. She said no. Showed her the video of her doing it. Still denied it. Brought mom in. Mom said she didn't do it. Showed mom the video of her daughter clearly walking out of my room with it. Still denied it. Told them her daughter was going to face an expulsion hearing, not a first offense, if she didn't apologize, return the item and come up with a solution on how she was going to make it right. Both still claim she didn't do it. Her expulsion hearing is tomorrow. I understand that you always want to believe your child, but the video is crystal clear and we are offering you an out if you admit to what you've done and make it right. Still nope. Kids need to know there are repercussions for their actions and not just blindly defend everything they have ever done. But yet when this story gets told from mom, this school has it out for her daughter and she has done nothing wrong. I've got a class of 8th grade students and we just got a new student. In his first week, he proceeded to grab a female student's butt with both hands. I call him up to my desk and ask him if he knows what unwanted touching and physical shaming assault mean. Without emotion he says that yes he does, but he's new so he needs to make a name for himself. I immediately sent him to the office. The saddest part about this is that the response I got from administration is that the student was spoken to about the situation and I need to make sure they do not sit near each other. No consequence for sexual assault equals you can be assured that something like this will happen again. I had a 3rd grader who was deemed physically inappropriate and was not allowed near any female students. Try figuring out the logistics of that in a class of 22 students. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade there was a guy in my class whose parents were among the more affluent in town and that donated a lot of money to the school in every way they could. They paid for the new computer lab and library renovation. They practically owned the school and staff. This guy could scream at teachers, throw desks, attack classmates and never get in trouble because his parents had that much power over them. He sent me to the hospital with my first concussion when he spontaneously slammed my head into a locker. I got 3 detentions because his parents decided the story was I had provoked him and then another 3 when I refused to apologize to him for said provocation. There never was hope for him. I didn't hear much because we moved to a different city to escape that school, but I heard he dropped out of high school, got his GED, then died serving in Iraq because his parents' influence couldn't get him a job outside their hometown. Most people would call him a hero for that, but he wasn't. I am not a teacher, but my 12-year-old son told me of an exchange a fellow student of his had with their science teacher, in which the student attested that it was her understanding that the sun was located on the Earth's equator, which is why it is so much warmer there. I can only imagine what must have gone through that poor woman's head hearing that. Bless her heart. I'm a science teacher and last year while talking about the California drought and how the reservoirs were all super low, one student raised his hand and asked why we couldn't just, fill them up with a hose. I teach high school. I'm a tutor for athletes at a university. Most of them are alright, good enough students, but they have so many scaffolds, tutors, mentors, and a team of adults creating their entire schedules all the way down to when they eat, study, and sleep, that sometimes they think they're not responsible for any of it. They don't know when their own exams are. They usually ask me. I'm a tutor, not a scheduler. They always walk into the tutoring session asking what are we doing today, and that's not how it works. They need to tell me what they need help with. Otherwise, I have no idea what chapter they're in or what they're doing in class. I'm not allowed to be in contact with their professors or TAs. That's their job. A lot of them are clearly only there to play football. Some have even told me as much, and only want to pass their classes for this reason. They're not thinking about careers outside the NFL. The worst part is, most of this is the fault of the school. The school gives them so many scaffolds so they can keep their star athletes who would otherwise fail out their first semester. The school wants them to focus on football instead of classes, because they bring in money. They have study halls where the athletes walk in and are handed a sheet detailing what assignments they need to finish that day, and sit next to mentors who make sure they actually get finished. No wonder they ask me what to do. As a student who is not an athlete, it actually makes me angry, thinking how easy college would be if I had all those scaffolds. But the university is basically setting them up for failure. If they don't go on to play in the NFL, who is going to hire them? I feel like I should mention, this is not all the athletes, and not even all the football players, though they tend to be the biggest culprits. I usually run into this problem when the athlete himself didn't request a tutor, me, but a mentor or supervisor did after they got a bad grade. Sometimes they don't even know they're getting a tutor until I show up. The whole thing is terribly mismanaged, but in particular if they need a tutor but don't want one. It's indicative of this larger issue. But if students request a tutor themselves, they are usually much more competent individuals. I was giving a final exam. A girl was sitting on her feet in a very unbalanced computer chair wobbling back and forth. I told her 3 times to sit with her feet flat on the floor. She kept putting them down and then slowly working them back under her butt again every time I passed. Finally, she fell over and crashed hard onto the floor, then proceeded to start laughing at the top of her lungs and rolling up and down the floor. The entire class was totally distracted, and this was a final where you needed every minute to be able to finish. When I finally managed to get her to stop laughing, I told her that she was disqualified from the final and that she was to report to the assistant principal's office immediately. She asked me what the problem was. I told her that repeatedly ignoring my request to sit properly in the chair was bad enough without the crash and the tremendous distraction. She said, "I bet it's only a problem because I'm black." Good God. It's like, please keep thinking that and use it to justify your outrageous behavior. Not a teacher but some guy I know dropped out of school at the age of like 12 because he was bullied. Note, I don't believe that to be the cause. He then spent the next 8 years chain smoking in his nan's front room, playing computer games and smoking weed, drinking. Now at the age of 16 he was eligible for some benefits from the government, but he even then was too lazy to just go down the job center and get someone to fill in the forms for him if he fakes dyslexia. He could read and write fine, could do basic maths no problem, and was very street smart, so even free money couldn't tempt him to get out of the house. Eventually I landed him a manual labor gig in which he lasted 2 weeks, going home early because it was too hard, and then got fired. A few months pass and he gets a gig in a local off license owned by a friend's parents. Gets fired because he was asked to dispose of some cardboard boxes by ripping them up and putting them in the recycle container. Boss comes back at the end of the day to find that he has literally sat there and torn half a box up by hand into tiny squares. Gets fired on the spot. A couple more years pass and this time another friend hooks him up in a care home where he does night shifts. Suits him fine as all he does is minor requests for the people there. As far as I know he's still employed there, and I suppose the moral of the story is even if you think there is no hope for some people, all they really need is the right environment to do what is needed, and that's it. He's an alright guy. Okay friend, but honestly I can't help to feel like he has so much wasted potential at something. Still wondering if he'll stick with that job or just sack it, but honestly I sincerely hope that the better side of humanity prevails here and he keeps working at something. Different days, school years, and students. Era. Can you die if you stop breathing? 13-year-old girl. Era. I can't feel my pulse. Oh my god. I can't feel my pulse. Same girl as before. Her twin sister starts freaking out because she tries and can't find her own pulse either. Me. Where are you looking for it? My neck. With her thumb. I should add. Me. Sometimes it's difficult to find it. You can be sure by checking your heartbeat. I wanted to end the nonsense quickly. Both girls place their hands on the right part of their chests and freak out more. I can't feel it. Am I dead? Oh my god. Why doesn't Madrid have a beach? 10-11-year-old boy. Me. It's in the middle of the country. Student. Yeah, okay, but why isn't there a beach? Sorry miss. I am late because I was waxing my butt. 17-year-old guy. And more. Fasapum. I was a student observing this situation. My 10th grade teacher's dad died. She went to the Philippines for the funeral. When she came back, the sub had left her incredible details notes for how crappy the students were. She went on a semi-long and well-deserved rant about how disappointed she was in us and how she came home from the funeral of one of the most important people in her life to see that all the supplies she put her own money into for our benefit were destroyed, stolen and vandalized. We all felt bad, of course, until that kid opened his mouth. This kid got up and said, "Your dad is still dead," though completely unprovoked and uncalled for. We all knew what he said was fricked up. She didn't respond. She left the room. A security lady took over the class about 10 minutes later until the school found a teacher with a free period, and eventually a sub. We didn't see her for another 4 days after that. Apparently the comment messed with her a lot more than she allowed us to view. She was insanely close to her dad, according to her colleagues. I work with a 2nd grader who has 3 new boyfriends a week. Not in a cute innocent way, but a seriously messed up and inappropriate way. She wears really scandalous outfits and walks around sticking her butt out. She goes around telling boys she wants to kiss them and they're all in love with her. She's started seeking out the quiet, innocent girls in her class and convincing them to go tell boys that they like them. She glares at us to wait until we're not looking to talk to the younger kids, kinda in 1st grade, about really inappropriate subjects. She's always watching me because she knows I know what she's up to and will wait until I turn my back to whisper gross things to kids. We talk to her parents every week about her being inappropriate and discussing relationships and sexual things with other students. It's no surprise that her young, good-looking mom or her boyfriend, who is at least 10 years younger than her, don't talk to her about it. I knew she was going to end up 16 and pregnant when she said, "Miss, do you have a boyfriend?" When I responded no, she says, "I know why you don't have a boyfriend. Boys don't like you. They like me though. This week I'm dating 3 boys and they all want to kiss me." She makes me cringe. Her behavior is a classic symptom of a child who is being physically shamed. Perhaps a long, private chat between her and the school psychologist is in order. Someone trained to get students to open up about subjects other adults in her life, cough, cough, the boyfriend, cough, cough, have told her to keep quiet about. We watched Ender's Game in my 7th grade intro to robotics class as part of a CFE Imagination Think Outside the Box lesson at the beginning of the year. It's normally I, Robot, but I wanted to see the movie based on a beloved old book even though I didn't hear good things about it. And I'm the teacher, so I have that power. The entire class was completely incapable of understanding why Ender thought it was wrong to destroy an entire species and said they'd do it without hesitation. I tried everything to get them to realize why genocide is bad, but all was met with "they're just aliens. Who cares?" I know their brains have literally not yet developed to the point where they are good at empathy, but man, they know what the Holocaust was. They know it was bad. They know Hitler is in the top 5 list of worst people in history. They still couldn't figure it out. I died a little inside that day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.